Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from Beyond. I'm Zeckthar.
And I'm Yuksen.
We are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We've seen the rise and fall of many empires, and this month we'll be discussing the backbone of the Imperium of Man, the Astra Militarum.
That's right, Zeckthar, and we're going to be talking about the Tallarn Desert Raiders, renowned throughout the galaxy for their stubbornness and courage.
Yes, well, to know the Tallarn Desert Raiders, one must first know of the struggles of their planet. Now, Tallarn is a harsh desert world in the Segmentum Tempestus, yet this was not always the case.
Oh?
Indeed. Back in the day of the Emperor, it was a rich agri-world settled by peaceful farmers. That was until the 31st millennium and the Horus Heresy. In a devastating surprise attack in 10.M31, the Iron Warriors Chaos Space Marines struck the fertile world of Tallarn. Thousands of virus bombs rained down on Tallarn, and the people ran to their enviro shelters deep beneath the surface. As they hid, safe from the devastating bioinfestation, the deadly coils of the viral DNA mutated as they were programmed to do. Animals, plants, even insects died as the Life Eater virus did its work, destroying the planet's ecosystem and biosphere and leaving it an empty shell devoid of life. After 7 solar weeks of isolation, the virus had run its course, and the remaining people of Tallarn emerged upon the surface. They found a world covered with an acrid slime of plants and corpses not yet decayed, for the world was completely sterile, without even bacteria to aid the decomposition of its dead. The stench was strong, and more than one person died from it. The Iron Warriors sent their task force to repossess the world for the Chaos Gods. From the underground bunkers, Tallarn's farmers emerged to try to desperately fight off the invaders. All would have been lost, except for reinforcements from both sides arrived. Rival space fleets, bringing vast armies to fight over the worthless remnants of the dead planet. The Battle of Tallarn raged for many solar months and was the largest armored conflict of the Horus Heresy. Outbreaks of viral infection from rogue viral DNA residue made it almost impossible for infantry to operate outside their protective shelters or the environmental sealed compartments of their tanks. The battle was finally decided by the vast armies of tanks deployed by the traitor and loyalist forces. When the fighting ended, the empty, putrid desert wastes of Tallarn were littered with the wreckage of more than 1 million shattered vehicles. The forces of chaos were driven from the world of Tallarn at great cost at the end of the Horus Heresy. Yet for all the millions that had died, there seemed to be little gained from the fight. The planet was destroyed and rendered useless for large-scale habitation, industry, or agriculture. The armies of the Imperium might well have given up Tallarn had their commanders realized the extent of the devastation. But once the armies were in motion, there was no going back. At the time, the Chaos attack made little sense. It seemed insane that even the fickle Chaos gods would expend such energy and precious resources fighting over a devastated world of no particular strategic significance. If only the Imperium knew what lurked beneath the surface of the now dead world. But in the aftermath of the Horus Heresy, there were few left to ponder such questions. Amongst the many evils of the time, it was just another demonstration of the random destruction created by chaos. Within 1,000 standard years of the Horus Heresy's end, Tallarn evolved into a very different world from the prosperous civilized planet of former times. Deserts of sulfurous sand stretched from pole to pole, and all water disappeared except for a thin residue remaining as a vapor in the atmosphere. No vegetation remained on the surface to be exposed to the blistering, wind-blown sands. All that grew was the carefully husbanded crops of Tallarn themselves, sheltered in their protective horticulture domes. The surviving people of Tallarn now lived in domed towns or in natural caverns hollowed out in the planet's rock. Fierce winds drove the Tallarn into their shelters. Corrosive sulfur storms made all surface travel risky, and eventually a system of tunnels was built to facilitate travel beneath the surface. Now, above their settlements, the Tallarn built vapor traps to catch evaporated water from the thin atmosphere. These tall towers still stand above the domes of Tallarn to this day, and all the water they use is caught by these cunning devices and channeled into subterranean holding tanks. Now, The planet of Tallarn must have the same concerns as the Lamenter's chapter, with all their bad luck, because another war of massive proportions would strike their planet again. And once again, the Masters of Chaos would come calling. Now, during the construction of the Arteral tunnels, Tallarn miners struck an outcrop of hard, black rock. They were unable to break through this strange substance, which was quite unlike any other they had encountered. After some days, they decided to divert the tunnel to go around it. As they did so, they discovered something very strange. At first, the black wall seemed like a natural formation, but soon they realized they had uncovered a deliberate construction. The initial excavations revealed a huge wall of strange black rock carved over its entire surface with weird entwined figures. The figures were human-sized, yet not entirely human, possessing a grace and beauty which rendered their grotesquely inscribed cavorting all the more perverse. Giant earth movers were brought in to dug out the layer of sulfur sand in which the wall was buried, and bit by bit it was slowly and painstakingly exposed to the daylight. Tallarn soon discovered the wall was not straight but curved, in fact part of a huge subterranean circle. Carefully, their most skilled technicians worked to uncover the entire object, a huge, ring-shaped mound a little more than a quarter of a mile across. It was not until the whole circle was exposed that the true disaster happened. With a blast of arcane power, the circle screamed and writhed. Its inert form turned suddenly to moaning flesh. Where before there had been carvings, now there were creatures themselves, being shaped like Eldari, yet twisted with an uncanny evil, locked together by some sorcerer's bond into a sickening embrace of depraved passion. Within the circle itself, blackness boiled and stars wheeled, stars that belonged in another part of the galaxy altogether. As the strange building awoke, far away in the black library of the Asuryani, a custodian shivered as he felt an unaccustomed surge of psychic power. Adrift from time and space, his mind searched the endless strands of probabilities and found the thread that led to Tallarn. After so long it had been discovered, the curses of Alganar, an artifact of evil from before the fall of the Eldari, a warp vortex of unimaginable power, one of the three mythical gateways of the gods. His mind shifted into synchronicity with the Farseers of his race, tracing the paths that linked his mind to the craft worlds of the Asuryani. When the knowledge touched the Farseers, the avatars of Cain would wake, and Cain would recognize the work of his ancient destroyer Slaanesh, Bane of the Eldari, the Prince of Chaos. And so, a Craftworld Eldari strike force sent by the Baal Tan Craftworld emerged from the webway above Tallarn and struck from the skies without warning or explanation. To the Tallarn, it was an unwarranted act of Xenos aggression. Little could they imagine that the fate of the entire Eldari species was bound up with this strange discovery. To the Asuryani, there was no time for explanation or discussion. They could not know whether the humans of Tallarn were in league with chaos, or whether the fierce desert people were unwitting pawns in the Dark God's great game. As far as the Asuryani knew, the only option was to attack, to destroy the curses if they could before it was too late. The Tallarn fought back with their characteristic ferocity. No longer meager farmers, years of living upon the burning sulfur deserts had honed them into resilient fighters. To the Asuryani, the deserts were an unknown quantity. Even the hardy Asuryani aspect warriors died under the heat of the sun, whilst the common Asuryani guardians fell to the lightning raids of the human desert warriors. But the Asuryani did not give up. They could not afford to abandon their attack. The survival of the galaxy and their species depended on it. Yet, it was already too late. The powerful warp gateway projected by the curses grew in power by the minute. The screams and wails of the damned souls of chaos filled the desert as the dark light brightened and fluxed within its core. Lights and stars swirled and clashed. Fountains of spinning incandescence spat into the night sky. The laughter of dark gods rebounded across the sulfur dunes, and the Eldari and humans alike shuddered in terror. From the curses poured the demonic minions of chaos, even as the heretic Astari warbands of the Iron Warriors returned to the world once more, called from the warp from the Eye of Terror by the siren song of the now active artifact. What emerged from the curses were entities indescribable to men, things that awakened primal terror in the Eldari hearts. hordes of slime and flame that cackled and bounded into battle. Transparent bodies of pure energy, divided and reuniting in a cascade of colors. Vile, fleshy things that pulsed with inner power and sucked at the air with poisonous lips. Long-legged abominations carried slender and elegant creatures, and feared demonettes of Slanesh upon their backs, beautiful and yet sickening to look upon. It was as if all the demons of hell had fallen upon Tallarn. Now, upon seeing these new and horrific enemies, the human commander of the Tallarn Desert Raiders called for a truce with the Xenos.
How shocking.
And hurried to the craft world Eldari lines, where the alien seers sat waiting. Knowledge drawn from the warp had finally opened their eyes. The rune stones lay cast upon the desert floor. Hope in union was predicted. Division would lead to damnation, darkness, and death. With their fate so clearly predicted, the Eldari and the human of Tallarn joined forces. The two allied races fell back before the chaos onslaught. Many were caught and destroyed in the early confusion, but the chaos advance was slowed by the merciless hit-and-run tactics of the Desert Raiders. Humans led Asuryani jet bike riders into the attack, and soon the Tallarn and the Asuryani were able to regroup. As the demon hordes advanced beyond the boundaries of the curses, their powers waned, as if they were depending upon the proximity for their power. And so it was, for the tendrils of chaos, though long, are very tenuous in the physical universe beyond the boundaries of the warp. And only bloodletting and victory can sustain the link between the chaos gods and their demonic minions. With skill and cunning, the Tallarn drew out the forces of chaos battle lines. Choosing their targets carefully, the Tallarn launched one attack after another, always retreating before the chaos hordes could turn to meet their fire. It was a tactic calculated to drain the power of the horde, and it worked better than even the wily sons of the Sulphur Desert could have hoped for. The Suryani seers saw the runes change, saw the opportunity develop. The demons were fading from reality fast, their glittering bodies growing ever more transparent, their cries ever weaker. The time had come to hit them hard. With a furious charge, the Asuryani and Tallarn threw their remaining strength against the gibbering horde. It was a last effort that would result in absolute victory or utter defeat. The chaos hordes shuddered, and the bodies of the demons seemed to fade and dull. The crackle of energy died, and the spark of light vaporized into the oily air. Many lay dead, human and Eldari warriors alike, gored by monstrous claws, crushed by the sensual caress of a poisoned tongue, or torn apart by razor-sharp teeth. Many Asuryani waystones were collected from the field, and many Tallarn taken back to their domes to surrender the water from their bodies to the hydro tanks. But it was a victory nonetheless over the forces of the arch-enemy of both peoples. Once the Asuryani had departed Tallarn in peace, and the people of both races had exchanged their promises of friendship, the Tallarn returned to the curses. They found the black stone of the terrible gateway cold and lifeless once more, just as it had been when they had first uncovered it. However, they knew now that the stone was not dead, but merely sleeping, awaiting its time again, waiting for the call of its evil masters. And so the Tallarn buried the curses beneath the sulfur sands once more, and placed within its circle the mysterious devices that the Eldari had given them to keep the cursed artifact inactive. Then they sealed the surface with plascrete and turned their backs upon it. Now, as you can clearly see, the Tallarn Desert Raiders are quite effective on the battlefield, and who better explain their stratagems and tactics than our good friend Yuksen?
Yes, and thank you. Approximately 20 standard years after the Battle of Tallarn ended, the first Tallarn Desert Raiders Regiment of the Astra Militarum were formed. These regiments specialized in desert fighting and were highly adept at ambushing enemy forces in the sandy wastes of their desert world, or any other. Because of the hostile environment of their world, Tallarn can only reasonably give soldiers to the Imperium's tithe collectors, and they do so with pride. Following desecration of their homeworld during the Horus Heresy by the Iron Warriors, that saw their once fertile agro-world reduced to waste, the Tallarn have been forced to make use of mechanized armor and APCs in order to safely move their infantry across the barren wasteland of their homeworld. As a result, the Tallarn Desert Raiders are also well known in their use of armored warfare, and their tank crews are some of the most renowned in the Imperium. Honing their skills on their homeworld, Tallarn are mobile guerrilla fighters, evasive and opportunistic. They are well known for their hard-fighting Sentinel squadrons and are masters of hit-and-run warfare. Their chief strength lies in their skill in guerrilla warfare, which makes use of various mounts as well as numerous Sentinel squadrons to remain highly mobile on the battlefield, harrying their opponents mercilessly before disappearing into the background. The Tallarn Desert Raiders are organized like most Astra Militarum regiments, employing combined arms tactics that make use of infantry, artillery, and armored companies. Yet due to their predilection for moving swiftly and striking suddenly and quickly, the most common Tallarn regiments are infantry. They're also known for including one or more patrol companies referred to as long-range recon, or more simply as recon companies.
Wait. These guys actually use reconnaissance?
And yet,
Ah,
when they are known for this, they don't.
what do you mean?
According to the Tooth River disaster,
So the one time that they didn't use it, disaster strikes. Brilliant. Sorry, go ahead.
because of their concepts of mobility, the Desert Raiders of Tallarn are known for their specialized Rough Rider squadrons that make use of the alien mounts known locally on Tallarn as the Mukalai.
Pardon me, brother, but what the devil is a Mukalai?
Well, they're kind of like a sauropod.
They're kind of hard to describe, aren't they?
Yeah.
For those of you listening on YouTube, I will have pictures of them. But for those of you on the podcast, sauropod, maybe like if you bred a sauropod with a camel
And remove the hump.
Remove the
and
hump
the hair.
and the tail.
And the eyelashes.
and shorten the neck down quite a bit. They're rather goofy looking. They don't look incredibly fast to me personally, but
yeah.
I mean they're rather strange looking. But sorry.
But the whole point behind them is they can last probably longer than a Tallarn can, for that matter.
On the desert.
They have ridiculous endurance and stamina.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what makes me think more camel than elephant. But, yeah.
Okay. Anyways, these mounts originate from the deserts of the Imperial world of Goro Prime, but have since been imported to other Imperial desert worlds, such as Tallarn.
Oh, so they're not even local to Tallarn?
Well,
Interesting.
they are now, but
they weren't originally from there.
Yeah. They also use armored regiments, all of which focus on some particular element of the favorite strategies of the Tallarn: the killing blow, stealth, and speed. Many Tallarn forces have also come to appreciate the utility of the Sentinel Walker due to its effectiveness as a means of crossing even rough terrain swiftly without sacrificing firepower. Much like the Catechins, the Tallarns tend to be slow to put their faith in anyone other than themselves and their comrades, and they chafe at the expectations and structures of more civilized Imperial society. The Tallarn Desert Raiders are known as great marksmen, employing a unique design of the M36 pattern lasgun, wholly indigenous to their forces. This desert-adapted weapon has a longer barrel and a mechanism that is more fluid to operate than the standard issue patterns of the M36 lasgun normally employed by the Imperial Guard. Due to their preference for hit-and-run warfare, the Tallarn also favor the use of plasma guns and the standard pattern missile launcher amongst their infantry units. These special weapons are easily transported and are favored for their ability to cause severe damage to the enemy despite their simplicity of use and lack of bulk. Now, before we discuss the Tallarn and who they are, I believe, Zeckthar, you wish to discuss a hero of this group?
Well, yes, I did. Now, of all the great leaders of the Tallarn, only one name stands above all others. One man who is spoken of in only the most honored whispers, and often even his name is used as a hungry, roaring charge to gather the strength of the raiders. His name is Al Rahim. Now, Captain Al Rahim of the Tallarn is the company commander of the 3rd Tallarn Regiment, also known as the Desert Tigers. Captain Al Rahim has a natural affinity for tactical command, never faltering in the heat of combat. His calm demeanor and use of initiative is the envy of many an aspiring general. Stalking his prey from afar before awaiting the most opportune moment to strike, Al Rahim leads his warriors in well-planned attacks. This Tallarn Desert Raiders commander doesn't employ the standard tactics of charging the enemy head-on, employed by his contemporaries, and instead, Al Rahim employs cunning and patience. In the grandest traditions of guerrilla warfare, the Desert Tigers prefer hit-and-run tactics, testing and probing their enemy's defenses before committing themselves to the fight. When the Desert Tigers strike, they do so suddenly, then melt away once more before their foes can retaliate. They then wait for the next opportunity to strike. Al Rahim's forces have vanquished many a foe that were many times their number in this way. Captain Al Rahim employed these tried and true methods against the elusive Eldari during the battle for the ruins of Esko's Moon, fighting a protracted guerrilla war that utilized his hit-and-run style of warfare. The Tallarn commander and a hand-picked platoon of his Desert Tigers trekked halfway across the moon's equatorial continent to strike at the ruin's lightly defended and supposedly unapproachable southern pass. Carefully constructing a crossfire for their erstwhile and elusive foes, Al Rahim himself claimed the head of the autarch Khalil after springing his deadly trap. Al Rahim also took the Desert Tigers to fight alongside the 4th and 5th Tallarn Desert Raider regiments in the Macarian Crusade from 392 to 399.M41. This famed 7-year-long crusade was led by the Lord Commander Solar Macarius. Yuksen, real quick, just a heads up, make a note. He's definitely somebody that we need to talk about later on. he's kind of important.
Think?
Anyways.
Considered one of the greatest commanders of humankind?
Yes, I think we have to talk about it a little bit. But down the road. Now, the Tallarn Desert Raiders, in fact, earned their nickname during this crusade on the planet Celestine, where the regiment fought a hard and successful war against human mutant rebels, receiving a commendation from the Inquisition for its part in the conflict. During the Macarian Crusade, Al Rahim led a company of Desert Tigers to the newly discovered desert world of Thoth. This world was not unlike the desert planet of Tallarn, and so it was only natural for the Desert Tigers to be chosen from amongst the regiments in the Macarian Crusade to take part in the invasion. If the legends are to be believed, Al Rahim purged the demon-infested world with but a single company of Tallarn Desert Raiders, supported by native tribesmen who united under his leadership. Some believe that the current captain, Al Rahim, was named after this man, whilst others argue that he is only the descendant of this Imperial Guard hero. There are even those who insist that Al Rahim and the legendary Tallarn commander are one and the same man. This is a possibility, as warp storms and dimensional cascades have been known to distort and twist the passage of time. But no one knows for sure. And Al Rahim answers all inquiries on the subject with but an enigmatic smile. Now, Captain Al Rahim is a natural leader and gifted linguist. Unlike myself, he possesses the innate ability to instill respect and confidence using his charismatic charm and quick intellect. He has even been able to do this when fighting alongside other Imperial Guard regiments allied with the Desert Tigers. Even those as fastidious as the Catachan Jungle Fighters, who are known for their distrust and scorn for all off-worlders, have a high regard for Captain Al Rahim. Now, another one of the things Al Rahim is famed for is the magnificent power sword known as the Claw of the Desert Tiger, whose curved blade was crafted in the shape of a scimitar. It was forged by master artisans and encrusted with the emblems of the desert. Its appearance has raised this weapon to legendary status, so that in the hands of Al Rahim, it is regarded with awe by his friends and with fear by his foes. He also carries a master-crafted plasma pistol, which is equipped with an infrared targeter. Well, that's all I got. Before we take our leave, I would like to hear what you think of the Desert Raiders, Yuksen.
I think they're very good at what they do. One of the things we didn't mention is in some cases they can be very, very pious, oddly enough.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't read anything
Um,
about that, but where are you getting that from?
example of
I guess.
that would be in one of Caiaphas Cain's books, where they would have rather been destroyed than have one of the landers land in the backyard of a convent.
Oh, what book was that? I don't remember that. I don't
Uh,
remember him actually fighting with the Tallarn. I remember the Valhallans quite a bit, but
well, the Tallarns stayed on their side of the planet.
huh?
It's the one where the Valhallans are given the dark side because it's constantly cold, and then the Tallarns were given the hot side to deal with, which is
Which
basically
makes sense.
desert.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, what were they fighting? I really don't remember this actually.
They were fighting chaos. They were fighting mainly worshippers of Slanesh, but also they're originally set there to protect against an incoming raid of corn worshippers.
Okay. So is this before or after they fought the Tyranids on the ice planet? Or I should say, actually, before or after their alliance with the Tau against the Tyranids, which was a different book, what later book, but was it before that
I
or after that?
I don't know.
Okay.
It, in the chronicling, it's after, but I don't know in the time spans as they pick and choose from different areas if they
Okay,
met
I got you.
together well.
Well, what did okay? So what did real quick, anyways? I guess what did Cain think of the Tallarn?
He thought they were more on the pious side.
Then what? They were more on the pious
Uh,
side than heathens, or because that'll
well,
normally get you shot. But
he saw them more as being very stubborn in their
piety.
yes. For example, he was quite pissed off, as was the general, that they burnt a worship site slash ritual site of chaos before anybody could go in there and take notes.
So okay, hang on. So this is the group, anyways, that actually has their own specialized reconnaissance team. But every time that we talk about them, anyways, it just they don't do any recon.
No, they purposely burnt it so that it wouldn't be in existence anymore. But they did that before anybody from HQ, being like, for example, the general and
Could
his
recon it.
staff, could actually, take
Recon it,
down information from it because it had been burnt to a crisp.
also known as reconning it. That's what I'm saying. Is that they? It seems like every time they're these great reconnaissance and scouters, but at the same time, every time that we talk about them in any like battle position, they just kind of like charge or just burn it. But what about the information? Who cares? Let the emperor sort them out. You know,
Yeah.
it's kind of bizarre. But anyways, so you find their piety kind of interesting, especially for being a desert people. What else do you like about them, or not like about them? I guess.
I don't like how they're supposedly recon companies don't actually recon, but as we found. Uh,
They're great at reconning things. They have a zero
then
casualty
they
rate.
do.
It's like they have a zero casualty rate. It's because they don't go anywhere. He's with the rest of the regiment. I can't. I I do like the fact, anyways, that out of all the groups that I can think of, anyways, these are the guys that when I think of like Rough Riders, these are the
Yeah.
guys I really kind of think of. Small units, hit and run. That's kind of their forte. I mean, the only other guys I can think of, anyways, that resemble that the whole hit and run concept is probably the Catechins and the Tanith. But these guys do it substantially different than both those two units do. They seem to use more of along the lines of like speed as their aspect, anyways, of getting in and out, as opposed to the Catechins, where it's just kind of like we're going to be sneaking into the last moment and then we murder everything in sight and then we disappear. back into the jungle.
Yeah.
Or the Tanith, who are just like, okay, we're going to set up anyways. There's snipers all the way around anyways, and just lay down a hail of fire, and then they'll never find us because we're so far away, and we can just melt back into the shadows. Yes, I understand anyways. The Tanith use other, and the Catechins use other tactics, but
Yeah.
these are the ones that are preferred. I do think it's also kind of interesting that they do like the armored vehicles, especially like the Chimeras, because they're fast. Well, fast-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have fast vehicles, fast-ish vehicles, not so fast, and then just like if we got out and walked, we would be better. Quite frankly, anyways, I think the more that I read it, especially anyways about the history of the planet itself. I mean, I'd always just I did first, for instance, I did not know that originally it was an agri world. I mean,
This
that
would
kind of
be
surprised me.
2 out of 3 of them, actually, that we talked about.
That were originally like these wonderful places to live, and then they just got bombed to obscurity.
Yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so real quick, I had another question for you here. Anyways, when they started actually producing the Desert Raiders, was that after? And you said that's after the Battle of Tallarn. Was that the one that I talked about anyways during the Horus Heresy, or was that the one with the Eldar when the Eldari showed up?
Well, I'm not 100% sure on that. I would assume it would be
Horus Heresy.
Yeah. Because can you really see the Imperium going, we'll leave you alone for a few thousand years. Then we'll come around and ask for regiments.
That's a good point. It's a very good point.
Especially after they went after the Vostroyans immediately after the war.
Said, now give us your people.
How dare you supply us with weapons instead of men?
Okay, so real quick before we run out of time here, anyways, we have so far, anyways, talked about what seven regiments, and we've only got a couple left, anyways, that are, and we'll talk about them next week. But which forces would you use? And I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios. Okay, so the first scenario would be on. We're going to use the same planet each time, by the way. Use a planet let's just use Tallarn 42. That'll make life easier for everybody. So we're gonna use Tallarn 42, and the first scenario is that you have to invade the planet, and we're talking about like huge amount of enemies there, like billions upon billions of people. And the second planet is more of significantly large strongholds in different positions around the planet.
Okay.
And in the first one, we are fighting chaos, forces of chaos. And in the second version, anyways, we are fighting orcs. Let's just use the orcs because the orcs are fun.
Okay, so the second one I'd probably use the
Oh, wait, and hang on half a second. One more thing. You can pick 2 different types of regiments. Well, we've talked about what? 7? So let's say 3. 3.
Okay, for the one with
And let's start with the first scenario. So we don't confuse people.
Okay, so the first one is just
You're fighting chaos. There's a huge amount of people. You have to invade the planet.
okay. So in that case, I would probably use the Hawks to be able to create a quick landing area.
Okay.
And then follow it up with maybe the Vostroyans and then the Catechins.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
The Vostroyans to create a perimeter, basically, since that's what their thing is, and then the Catechins because they can work on multiple terrains.
Okay. I would have gone a little bit different. I would have used the Harakoni Warhawks as well. Mainly because they're a little bit more heavy infantry than the Elysians, and I would love to use the aspect anyways of just hammering them into the trenches. I would also use the Vostroyan Firstborn because they seem to be a very good division anyways that can hold the line. But then instead of the Catechins, I'd probably pick the Krieg.
Okay.
and use them anyways as just a slow advancing barrage anyways into conquering whatever I needed to conquer.
Okay.
All right. So now the second scenario.
The second scenario, I would use the Krieg, since they're known for both trench warfare and siege.
Okay.
And so, obviously, if you're going to be focused on multiple fortresses and forts, kind of be good to have that.
I already tell anyways they're going to be vastly different on this one. Okay. Go ahead. That's fine.
Probably the Tallarn, actually, possibly. We're talking about siege mainly. Well, actually, the Tallarn would be good because they draw out the orcs.
It's true. We didn't actually talk about that. I figure, anyways, the Talon would probably be the best fighting orcs for that exact reason that you just described. That whole concept of hit and run, anyways, is like perfect when fighting orcs, because the orcs, anyways, after you've riled them up, they'll charge towards you, and then you can use other units, anyways, to just crush them.
Or the Valhallan, since they're like one of the only planets that's actually being able to completely eliminate all of the orcs on their planet and not have any of them pop back up.
Well, we haven't talked about the Valhallans yet, so we can't use them, unfortunately.
Yeah. And for the third...
So you are going to use the Tallarn?
Yeah.
You got the Krieg and the Tallarn. Okay.
I would probably use the Catechins, because they're known for fighting things like orcs do.
Well, I mean, first off, none of these are really wrong answers. And secondly, you really can't go wrong with the Catechins. Any scenario I threw in front of you, you probably go, well, I'd take the Catechins. Why? Well, they're the Catechins. I mean...
Well, if we had talked about the 10th, I would have taken the 10th over the Catechins when it came to...
In this one? Really?
Siege. Yeah.
Okay. The way I figured it anyways is that I would probably use... to me, it would be kind of a toss-up between the Harakoni Warhawks and the Elysians. I want that unit anyways that can drop in behind enemy lines.
These are orcs. There's no real enemy lines.
Well, they kind of are. I mean, you've got areas anyways that they control. Instead of, in front of them, you're coming in behind them.
Which very shortly will be in front of them.
Yes. So... I probably, because of that aspect, they are fighting orcs. I would probably take the Warhawks, although the Elysians would be kind of a close second. And then I would probably use the Tallarn as hit and run attack options anyways to draw them out of their fortresses. And then the crushing element behind them anyways would be the Catechins. Because that's what they do. They kind of murder everything. So kind of an interesting concept. I think, anyways, both ideas on both sides would work. Well, quite frankly, anyways, we could have probably thrown anybody in there and it would have worked. As long as you use the right tactics. So
I don't think the Praetorians would work so well, though.
We didn't talk about... Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess I could use the Praetorians.
It'd be like, yes, we can fire lines and lines of lads as orcs. Well, the orcs can do the same, and their things will do more damage than you. Sorry to say.
I don't know about that.
A las gun versus a shoot bolt.
Yes, but as we described anyways, a shooter anyways shot by an orc sometimes hits the target.
Yes.
A precision spider anyways with a las gun will always hit the target. It's the concept not really of which weapon is better, but who's the better shooter. This
or
case.
Who has the most firing.
So you know what? I'm gonna replace one of my guys. We got to give the Praetorians some love. I'm gonna replace the Vostroyans with the Praetorians in the first scenario. They pretty much do the same thing. I mean, they're straightforward. They have artillery anyways that fire behind them. They do the same thing the Vostroyans do. The only difference is that the Praetorians think everybody else is cheeky. Well, I think that's about does it for today, unless you've got anything else anyways you want to say anyways about the Tallarn or anybody else that we've actually talked about.
No?
Okay. Well, on that note, we are out of time. Sorry we had to split this one up this week, but we kind of wanted to get back to where we're doing a Vox that's about an hour long. But I hope you enjoyed it so much, anyways, that you'll join us next week for more famous regiments of the Imperial Guard, including the most famous regiment of all the Imperial Guard, the Cadians.
Awesome. Can't wait to talk about them. But if you're still listening to this, then if you could be so kind as to push that subscribe, like, or follow button. If you wish to help us expand our work on 40K lore, by all means, support us by joining our membership program on our YouTube channel, Tales of Asharaka.
Have a great day, and as always, until next time, this is Zeckthar,
And Yuksen.
signing off.